Have you ever wondered what you might hear if the noise stopped? Not the noise around you, the chatter, the traffic, the endless distractions. I mean the noise within you. The restlessness, the cravings, the constant hunger for something more pleasure, more entertainment, more consumption. What if, just for a while, you stopped feeding it? What if you allowed the body to go silent? Because when the body goes silent, something sacred begins to speak. The soul, your truest self, begins to whisper truths that have been buried under years of distraction and desire. But most people never hear it, because they are terrified of silence. They equate abstinence with suffering. They think abstaining means missing out on life, when in truth it is the exact opposite. Abstinence is not punishment, it is purification. We live in a time where stimulation is sold as happiness. Every urge must be satisfied. Every desire must be fulfilled instantly. We have been conditioned to believe that control is unnatural, that resisting the urge to indulge is somehow harmful. But here is the truth: anything you cannot say no to controls you, and if it controls you, you are not free. Real power, unshakable, silent, pure power, comes from choosing restraint, from saying no, not because you have to, but because you can. That is the discipline of a true warrior. When you practice abstinence, whether it's from food, from pleasure, from excess, you begin to observe something miraculous. First, there is discomfort. The body protests, the mind screams, but then the noise fades, the craving dies, and in that emptiness, something profound arises. Clarity, peace, strength, a stillness so deep it feels like standing at the center of a storm, untouched. This is when the soul begins to speak. Not with words, but with a knowing. You start to see through illusions. You recognize how much of your energy was wasted chasing temporary highs. You realize that what you were looking for outside was always within. Abstinence is not about denial. It is about awakening. It is about mastering the mind rather than being a slave to it. It is about reclaiming the most sacred of all powers, the ability to choose with awareness, with purpose. There is a reason ancient masters chose silence, fasting, celibacy, stillness, not because they wanted to suffer, but because they understood that the real treasure is not found in adding more, but in removing the noise that hides it. So, sit with your hunger, sit with your discomfort. Don't run, don't numb it. Listen to what it's trying to teach you. There is wisdom in that space, there is healing, and above all, there is truth. This is the truth behind abstinence. It is not the absence of life, it is the beginning of a life truly lived. Have you ever truly heard silence? Not just the absence of sound, but the absence of craving, the absence of need, the absence of that inner itch that never lets you rest. Most people in this world live their entire lives without ever experiencing real silence. Their days are filled with noise, but not just the noise of voices and machines. It's the noise of their own desires constantly whispering, shouting, pulling them in every direction. It's the noise of "I want this, I need that, I can't go without this," echoing inside the mind like a storm that never ends. But what if I told you that silence is not empty? That in fact it is the most full, most profound space a human being can step into. A space not everyone is brave enough to enter. There was once a young man, restless and always searching. He chased every pleasure, every taste, every rush. He thought freedom meant having everything. He lived fast, indulged in everything the world could offer. He believed silence was lifeless, that abstinence was boring, that discipline was a cage. But no matter how much he had, the emptiness inside him grew louder. One day, after years of chasing and still feeling hollow, he walked away. Not because he was weak, but because he finally realized that what he was searching for couldn't be found out there. He went into silence, not into a forest or a cave, no, not necessarily the kind of silence that surrounds you from outside, but into the kind of silence where you stop feeding your cravings. He stopped eating the moment he felt full, instead of the moment he couldn't eat more. He stopped reaching for entertainment when boredom crept in. He stopped chasing pleasures that only lasted moments. He began to practice abstinence, not as a punishment, but as a path to something deeper. In the beginning, it was hard. The body protested. The mind screamed louder than ever before. His cravings danced in front of him like ghosts, and he almost gave in. But something inside him, something ancient and quiet, told him to wait, just a little longer, to stay still in the storm. And so he did. Then, something magical happened. Slowly the screams turned into whispers. The body stopped fighting, the mind stopped begging, and for the first time in his life he felt a space open inside him. A space without hunger, without restlessness, without noise. In that space he didn't feel empty, he felt awake. Awake to a world that had always been there but was hidden behind his distractions. It is in that stillness that you begin to see. You begin to notice how addicted you were to comfort, how much you let desires pull your strings like a puppet, how easily your emotions were hijacked by things that don't matter. You realize that most of your energy was being spent feeding things that were only making you weaker, not stronger. And that is when a new kind of strength is born, the kind that doesn't shout but stands. The kind that doesn't need to prove anything, because it has already won the greatest battle of all, the battle over self. You see, abstinence is not about missing out. It's about stepping in. It's not about saying no to life. It's about saying yes to a deeper version of life. A version where you are no longer dragged by every passing desire, but where you walk with clarity, intention, and power. When you strip away the noise, what's left is the truth, the real you, not the one built by habits and urges, but the one built by silence, awareness, and strength. People often ask, why should I deny myself pleasure? Isn't life meant to be enjoyed? And the answer is simple. Life is not meant to be enjoyed, but if you're constantly chasing enjoyment, you're never living it, you're just running. The person who can sit with himself in silence, in stillness, without craving, that is the person who has discovered the secret of freedom. The body is a powerful machine, but it can also be a noisy one. It will try to convince you that you need more food, more comfort, more distractions. But those who are wise know, when the body goes silent, something else speaks. The soul begins to awaken. You feel something deeper than satisfaction. You feel truth. You feel presence. You feel unshakable peace. Not the peace that comes from escaping problems, but the peace that comes from facing them without fear. And that peace is priceless. The same young man who once couldn't sit still for 5 minutes now sits in silence for hours. Not because he forces himself to, but because in that silence he has found more than the world ever gave him. He found himself. Not the version others told him to be, not the version chasing approval, but the version that lives in every single human being, hidden beneath the noise, the warrior, the monk, the master, the soul. You do not need to go into the mountains to find this silence. You only need to close your eyes and listen, to stop feeding the noise, to dare to pause, to embrace the discomfort, and to remember that every craving that arises is a teacher. Every desire resisted is a step toward your true self. When the body goes silent, the soul doesn't scream, it doesn't need to, it simply speaks, gently, clearly, powerfully, and in that moment, you will know something that no book, no screen, no voice could ever give you, the feeling of being truly alive, truly free, truly at peace. Let the world chase its pleasures, let the noise grow louder, but let you be the one who chooses silence, not because you are running away, but because you are walking into the fire of truth. And when you come out, you will not be the same, you will be real, you will be whole, you will be unbreakable. When people hear the word abstinence, their minds often jump to restriction, to discipline that feels like punishment. They imagine sacrifice, giving something up, missing out, and so they turn away from it, not realizing that what they are really turning away from is themselves. You see, abstinence is not about saying no to life. It is about saying yes to something much greater. It is not the art of denying the body, but the process of awakening the soul. It is not deprivation, it is liberation. There once lived a boy who thought the world owed him pleasure. He believed freedom meant being able to do whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. If he wanted to eat, he would eat. If he wanted to scroll, he would scroll. If he wanted to escape, he had 100 ways to disappear. He thought this was happiness, that freedom was the ability to say yes to every craving. But one day, life did something it always does. It took away the distractions. It stripped away the comfort. And for the first time, the boy had to sit in his own silence. At first, he hated it. His mind raced. His body twitched. Every moment of stillness felt like a lifetime of suffering. He realized how much he relied on his habits to feel alive. But something inside him whispered, stay, just stay. Don't run, don't numb, don't reach for the thing you always reach for. Watch what happens. And so he stayed. He didn't give in to the urge to open his phone. He didn't give in to the craving to eat for pleasure. He didn't fill the space with noise. He stayed with the discomfort, and slowly something extraordinary began to happen. He started to feel free. Not the kind of freedom he used to chase, that was just dependency with a prettier name. No, this was different. This was the freedom of not being pulled, of not being owned by impulse. He realized that real power isn't the ability to say yes to everything. It's the ability to say no and still be whole. Because anything you cannot say no to controls you. Let that sink in. You may think you are choosing it, but if you cannot go without it, it owns you. And if it owns you, how can you ever call yourself free? Abstinence is the path that leads to mastery. It teaches you to observe your desires without being ruled by them. It teaches you to understand what is truly needed and what is just habit. It gives you space, and in that space awareness grows. In that space you grow. People often misunderstand this. They think abstinence makes you weaker, that it shrinks your world, but the truth is it expands it. When you abstain from constant stimulation, your senses become sharper. When you fast from indulgence, your appreciation deepens. When you detach from dependence, your inner strength begins to rise. The greatest masters throughout time were not men and women who had more than others. They were those who could live with less and still feel complete. They were not owned by their hunger. They used their hunger to sharpen their minds, to train their discipline, to build their spirit. Think of the archer. He does not shoot the arrow every second. He waits, he breathes, he draws the bow with stillness, with control. The power is not in constant release, it is in restraint. That is what abstinence teaches, not to be empty, but to be full of awareness. The boy who once ran from silence, he is now a man who walks with stillness. He still feels desire, yes, but desire no longer owns him, and that, more than any possession, more than any moment of fleeting pleasure, is the mark of mastery, not the one who controls others, but the one who controls himself. Imagine this, you walk into a room full of temptation, noise, indulgence, chaos, and none of it moves you. Not because you are numb, but because you are rooted, because your peace is not for sale, because you are not looking for yourself in things. You already found yourself in the fire of abstinence, in the silence of self-discipline, in the stillness that came when you stopped running. That is real power. So when you feel the pull to check the phone, to open the fridge, to escape your feelings, stop, breathe, don't move, sit with it, watch the urge like a cloud passing in the sky. It is not stronger than you. It only feels strong because you've never challenged it. Abstinence is that challenge. It is the mirror that shows you who you are beneath your habits. It is the road that leads you not away from pleasure, but toward the joy that cannot be taken from you. Because in the end, the one who can master his desires is the one who can master his destiny. The one who chooses stillness over noise, restraint over reaction, truth over temporary pleasure, that is the one who walks the path of a warrior. Abstinence is not about less. It is about you becoming more aware, more alive, more powerful, not because you have everything, but because you no longer need everything to feel whole. And when you reach that place where the world no longer controls you, where every choice is made with clarity and calm, you will understand. This was never about denial. It was about coming home. Home to the part of you that was always waiting, just beyond the noise. There is a moment, rare and quiet, when the world stops spinning, when everything that once felt loud inside begins to settle. It is not something you can buy or force or fake. It arrives only after a long silence. A silence that you don't stumble into by accident, but step into with courage. Because to arrive at that moment, you must first pass through the fire of your own desires. Desire is not the enemy. It is part of being human. But when desire becomes constant, when it rules your thoughts, your habits, your choices, it drowns out the one voice that can truly guide you. That voice isn't loud. It never demands. It waits, and it waits in the stillness beyond craving. There once was a man who sought wisdom. He read the books, he met the teachers, he walked far and wide, gathering knowledge like a traveler gathers stamps in a passport. But still, something was missing. He didn't feel peace. He didn't feel connected to anything deeper. Only moments of insight, flashes of clarity, and then gone. So he went to a teacher not known for words, but for silence. The teacher gave him no books, no mantras, no tasks. Only one instruction: fast, sit, listen. And for the first few days that was unbearable. The man's body screamed for food. His mind clawed for stimulation. He imagined walking away 100 times. But he stayed. And slowly, something began to change. Not outside, but within. The noise began to soften. The cravings faded. Not because they were satisfied, but because they were no longer needed. In the absence of noise, he began to notice something else. A quiet, steady presence. A voice not made of words. A knowing not based on logic. It had been there all along, but he had been too loud to hear it. You see, most people walk through life chasing echoes of what they think will complete them. A better job, a better body, a better relationship. They reach, consume, acquire, but the hunger returns, always. That hunger isn't for what they think. It's the soul calling, whispering, "I am here, but you must become still to hear me." The problem is, stillness terrifies people. Craving feels like movement, it feels like aliveness, but it is only a distraction, and abstinence is the mirror that reveals just how loud those distractions have become. When you stop feeding them, when you choose to sit with the emptiness, the real voice begins to rise. Not a voice of fear or urgency, but one of deep, wordless truth. It doesn't beg, it doesn't fight. It simply exists, like the moon behind the clouds, waiting for the wind to pass. And this is what most people miss. They think the soul should scream, that wisdom should appear with thunder. But the soul has never been in a rush. It is patient, eternal. It waits for you to be quiet enough to return to it. When you abstain from the constant stimulation of desire, you create space, and space is sacred. In that space you begin to hear your own breath, the rhythm of your heart, the subtle shifts of energy inside your body. You begin to notice that most of your suffering didn't come from lack, but from noise, from chasing what you never truly needed. Desire is like a flame, beautiful, powerful. But when left unchecked, it consumes, it burns without purpose. But when observed, understood, mastered, it can become light. The fire becomes guidance, the craving becomes clarity, and this transformation begins the moment you stop obeying every urge that arises. Imagine you are in a forest, surrounded by the songs of birds, the rustle of leaves, the hum of nature, but you wear headphones blasting chaotic music. The forest is still there, full of life and peace, but you can't hear it. That is what life is like when you are lost in desire. Abstinence is removing the headphones. But even more than that, it is becoming quiet enough inside that you finally hear the forest within. The soul has always been whispering. The question is, are you still enough to listen? There comes a point in everyone's journey where they realize that no amount of external success, pleasure, or recognition can satisfy what is aching inside. That ache is not for more, it is for meaning. It is for connection to the part of you that doesn't age, doesn't rush, doesn't need validation. The part of you that is eternal. The part of you that is soul. And the gate to that connection is not through addition but through subtraction. Not through more but through less. Less noise, less stimulation, less indulgence. Only then, when the mind becomes like still water, can the reflection appear clearly. That is the power of abstinence, not in the act itself, but in what it creates. A space so clean, so unshaken, that the deepest parts of your being rise to the surface. You begin to see who you truly are, beneath the cravings, beneath the habits, beneath the noise. And in that moment, a kind of peace washes over you that no pleasure could ever match. The man who once sought wisdom in 1,000 voices now found it in his own silence. The answers were never far. They were buried under everything he thought he needed. All it took was the courage to be still, to abstain, to listen, to listen. And now he walks not with the hunger of a seeker, but with the fullness of one who has returned home. So the next time your desires rise like a storm, don't run, don't react. Watch, breathe, let the storm pass. In its wake you will hear something you've never heard before, your own soul, speaking in the language of stillness, and that voice will never lie to you. There is a battle happening every single day, not in the streets, not on the screens, but deep inside of you. It's not a battle others can see. It doesn't come with armor or noise, yet it is the fiercest war you will ever face. It is the battle between who you are and who your impulses want you to be. This is not a story of enemies outside. This is a story of the inner war, the war against the part of you that wants ease, comfort, and immediate satisfaction. It is the part of you that whispers, just one more time, just a little longer, no one will know. And every time you listen to it, you lose a piece of your power. Every time you give in, the voice gets louder, more convincing, more cunning. But you were not born to be ruled by that voice. You were born to rise above it, to look it in the eye, not with hatred, but with calm certainty. That is why you need a sword, not a blade to harm others, but the sword of self-discipline. And that sword is forged through abstinence. There once was a young man who had everything: comfort, access, distraction, luxury. Whatever he desired, he could reach for it. He lived like a king, yet inside he was crumbling. His strength was borrowed, not built. His confidence was performative, not real. Because every time desire knocked, he opened the door. Every time temptation called, he answered. Until one day, he met a man who lived differently. A man who carried nothing flashy, spoke little, and yet radiated something powerful. A presence, a stillness, a gravity. The young man asked, "What do you do to be so at peace?" The older man smiled and said, "I've trained to win the only battle that matters, the one inside. Everything else is noise." At first, the young man didn't understand. What battle? Life seemed fine, but something in him stirred. He started watching himself, noticing how often he was pulled, how little control he had, how addicted he was to small pleasures, his phone, his routines, the approval of others. And when he tried to stop, even for a day, he saw how quickly his mind panicked. That's when he realized the war was real, and he was losing. So he began, slowly. At first it was just saying no to things that no longer served him. Skipping a meal, not to punish himself, but to watch his reactions. Turning off his screen, not to escape life, but to face it. Sitting in silence, not to be dramatic, but to listen. And in that listening, he found a noise louder than anything outside, his own resistance. It screamed at him, it told him to quit, to return to comfort. But with every urge he sat through, with every craving he denied, something strange happened. He grew stronger, not louder, not prouder, stronger in silence, stronger in clarity. He no longer needed applause to feel worthy. He no longer needed sugar to feel happy. He no longer needed chaos to feel alive. He was becoming a warrior, not with weapons, but with awareness. And abstinence was his training ground. This is what most people don't understand. The world teaches you to fight for more. More money, more attention, more status. But real warriors fight for less. Less dependence, less confusion, less noise. They fight to remove everything that weakens them. And they do it by choosing discipline, by embracing the hard path when the easy one is wide open. That's the paradox. The hard path is what makes you soft where it matters. In the heart. Soft enough to feel. Soft enough to care. But it also makes you unshakable in the face of storms. Because you've already fought harder battles within yourself than the world could ever throw at you. Abstinence isn't about living without. It's about living within. It's about creating space for strength to grow. Every time you delay gratification, every time you say no when it's easier to say yes, you sharpen your sword. You raise your standard. You remind yourself that you are not here to be ruled by lower impulses. You are here to rise, to master yourself, and to walk this world with quiet power. But make no mistake, the inner war never ends. There is no final victory. Only daily choices. You wake up and decide, will I train today or will I retreat? Will I face my cravings or will I feed them and fall asleep again? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to win every battle. But you must be willing to fight. Because the alternative is not peace, it's decay. It's living as a prisoner of comfort, slowly growing weaker while convincing yourself that you are free. There will come a moment, maybe in the silence of the night, maybe in the heat of a decision, when you will hear that inner voice rise again. The one that says, just this once. And in that moment you will remember, you've heard it before, you've beaten it before, and you can beat it again. Not because you are special, but because you trained when no one was watching. Because you chose the harder path when it was easy to quit. Because you understood that abstinence was never about restriction. It was about building the kind of self-respect that no one can give you and no one can take from you. The battle is within, and abstinence is not your prison, it is your weapon. Sharpen it, carry it with honor, and walk this world not as someone who reacts to life, but as someone who commands it. In silence, in strength, in truth. There will come a day, not in the distant future, but in a quiet, ordinary moment, when you will be faced with a choice. No lights, no applause, no audience, just you and the voice inside your mind. One voice will say, give in, it's easier, no one will know. And another, quieter voice will whisper, not this time, stand your ground. That second voice is the one that will define the rest of your life, not because it shouts louder, but because it speaks truth. You see, greatness is not built in front of crowds, it is built in silence. It is forged in the dark corners of your day, when you choose discipline over desire, when you say no to temporary pleasure for the sake of permanent strength. The world may never see those choices, but you will feel their weight. And over time, those silent victories become your shield, they become your legacy. Don't fall for the illusion that freedom is the ability to do what you want when you want. That is not freedom. That is slavery to your impulses, and it is the reason most people live trapped in invisible chains. True freedom, real, lasting freedom, comes from having power over yourself. It is when you look temptation in the eye and say, you don't own me anymore. That is not weakness. That is the purest form of strength there is. Most people never experience that strength because they are too busy running from discomfort. But discomfort is not your enemy. It is your doorway. The pain you avoid holds the power you seek, and abstinence is not the lock, it is the key. Think of every great soul you've ever admired. They all shared something in common. Not wealth, not fame, not talent, but discipline. The ability to endure, to resist, to stay still when the world begged them to move, to say no when the world applauded yes. They all understood that self-mastery is the foundation of all greatness. Muhammad Ali once said, I hated every minute of training, but I said don't quit, suffer now and live the rest of your life as a champion. That is the mindset of those who win the inner war. They don't live for the moment, they live for meaning. They don't bow to cravings, they rise above them. Steve Jobs famously said, "People think focus means saying yes to the thing you've got to focus on. But that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to 100 other good ideas." Focus is not addition, it is elimination. It is abstinence in action. Saying no to what is loud so you can say yes to what truly matters. And what truly matters is this: who are you becoming when no one is watching? The man who trains in silence will be unshaken in the storm. The woman who fasts from indulgence will walk lighter than the rest. The person who dares to deny themselves will be the one who one day commands themselves. That is the goal. Not to impress, not to outperform, but to become the kind of person who does not betray their own potential. Bruce Lee once said, "It's not the daily increase but the daily decrease." Hack away at the unessential, and that is the heart of this message. Hack away at what weakens you. Hack away at the lies you tell yourself. Hack away at the comforts that steal your strength. Hack away until what is left is pure. You don't need more, you need less. Less distraction, less comfort, less addiction to fleeting pleasures. Because in that emptiness, something miraculous will take root. A voice will rise, not the voice of ego, not the voice of craving, but the voice of your soul. And when your soul speaks, listen, because it never screams, it only whispers, and it whispers only in silence. Remember this: lions do not need to roar to be feared. Oceans do not need to crash to be deep, and you do not need to prove your strength to possess it. Walk quietly, train daily, say no often, let the world keep shouting. You remain still. If you ever feel like giving in, remember why you started. You didn't come this far to become ordinary. You didn't wake up today to serve your weakness. You were not born to bow to every appetite. You are not here to chase every comfort. You are here to master yourself. And mastery is not a gift, it is earned, day by day, moment by moment, through every decision you make when the world isn't watching. And in those quiet choices you will rise. You will become someone even your past self would not recognize. Someone built not by the world's praise, but by your own silent victories. So here is the truth. The greatest battle is not fought in the ring, on the stage, or in front of cameras. It is fought in the stillness of your own heart. And abstinence, painful, uncomfortable, unglamorous abstinence, is the weapon of those who choose to win. Choose to win, choose the silence, choose the fight. And one day, when the world wonders how you became so unshakable, you will smile because you'll know. You did what they wouldn't. You walked the harder path, and in doing so you didn't just change your habits, you changed your soul. That is the power of abstinence, and that power, that greatness is already within you. Wake it up.